Life and business can feel chaotic when you're trying to do it all. That's where Andy Melton Coaching comes in. For nearly 2 decades, Dr. Andy Melton has helped high-achieving leaders find freedom in their time, relationships, finances, and purpose. His 90-minute strategic rhythm reset is more than a coaching session. It's a chance to redesign your week so you can get more done without burning out. You'll create a personalized rhythm blueprint that aligns your goals and priorities and walk away with a clear plan to focus your energy. Trade chaos for clarity and bring your dreams to life. To learn more and book your session, visit scalinguph2o.com/Andy Melton. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/ANDYMELTON. Don't wait. Schedule a strategic rhythm reset with Dr. Andy Melton today. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. It's Trace Blackmore. And if there's one thing we know as water treaters, it's that success comes from building strong partnerships. And that's exactly what North Metal and Chemical Company is all about. My friends at North Metal are committed to creating long-term relationships built on trust, reliability, and innovation. Their industry-specific expertise means they understand your challenges and work tirelessly to provide great Northwest products along with a personal touch. With dedicated technical support, North Metal and Chemical Company stands out as a partner who truly cares about your success in the industrial water treatment space. Head over to scalinguph2o.com/north and start building a partnership you can count on. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/north. North Metal and Chemical Company, serving the water treatment industry since 1921. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, the host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And Nation, I am so happy about today because we are going to talk about one of my favorite topics, corrosion coupons. And I've done several episodes about corrosion coupons. In fact, if you look in the show notes, you can very easily go back and listen to some of those episodes. I remember back in the day, I didn't really understand corrosion coupons and what the importance of them was. And then I saw through people that were mentors through me what information they were getting, what extra information they were getting on the system that I maybe wasn't getting at the time because all my systems didn't have corrosion coupons. So I was guessing. I didn't know what the corrosion rates were because I didn't have that data. So from that point on, I just decided that my company was going to make sure that we had corrosion coupons in all systems. And you know, sometimes you get that one customer where it's just not going to happen. I'm sure we have a few of those, but for the most part, every single one of our systems have corrosion coupons. And that's great because that's another piece of data that we can use to better diagnose what's going on in the system. Now, we're going to talk all about this, but I just get so excited thinking about what we're getting ready to talk about. A coupon is nothing more than a very small metal strip, much like the metal that's already in the system. They're normally about 3 inches long by about 1/2 inch by 1/16 of an inch. So really, really small piece of metal, and that is pre-weighed to 4 decimal points. So very, very tiny changes can be measured. And then after it goes into the system for a particular amount of time, it's then weighed again. And then we can tell so much from that if we know what to look for. Now, on many episodes, I talked to you about how important it is to have a mentor. Well, one of my mentors really showed me what corrosion coupons could tell you as an industrial water treater and gave me all this knowledge so I could do my own corrosion coupons and know what was going on in the system. And we really did it right. We invested in a lab to make sure that we were doing things correctly. And over the years, several other water treaters started sending their coupons to us, and we started doing that. Well, we don't do that as a primary source of business, and there are some great companies out there that are doing that, that just do a fantastic job. So we just have a handful of people that we do that for. But in that process, I have seen literally thousands of coupons. So many that I can look at a coupon, and then knowing what's going on in that system, I now have another look into that system where I can pinpoint things that are going on. And that's just been really cool. And that was all shared with me by one of my mentors. And it's all around corrosion, which is one of the four things that we have to deal with as an industrial water treater. Now, I haven't said this in a while, so to catch everybody up, that's corrosion control, that's scale control, that's control of microbial fouling. And folks, that is not the eradication of waterborne pathogens. That's making sure the system stays clean for heat transfer purposes, which is very different and often very misunderstood. And then the fourth thing is just keeping the system clean from general dirt and debris. So those are the four things that we have to do. And of course, corrosion was the one that I mentioned first. There's a lot behind corrosion. And I just not too long ago saw something very interesting, and I actually found out that it happens quite a bit. So it was called a lasagna battery. Somebody brought lasagna. I believe they had it in a steel pan, and they had aluminum foil over it. Of course, they had the sauce with the salt and all the spices and different things like that. Well, when they took the aluminum foil off, it was green. And what had happened is they actually created a battery, a lasagna battery. And I just thought it was really, really cool. Of course, the person that brought it was mortified because they thought it was ruined. I don't think it really tastes any different. We kind of just scraped off the top on the side, and I think everything was fine. If there's somebody out there that knows different, we ate it and it was fine. But I just thought that that was chemistry awesomeness because it was very entertaining to me. And I looked it up, and that seems to happen quite a bit. Well, everything was there. We had an anode, we had a cathode, we had an electrolyte, we had an electrical path. I've just never seen anything like that before. So there you go. Be careful. Make sure you don't have dissimilar metals and all that stuff going on that I'm sure helped that corrosive state. Now, I'm not sure how long they had it sitting like that. I guess if it was refrigerated properly, that still could happen. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because I thought that was cool. And there's actually, if you can research a lasagna battery, and I'm sure that will work with other things as well. Well, talking about corrosion, ISO 8044 defines corrosion as a chemical or electrochemical interaction between materials, usually a metal, and its environment, resulting in changes in the properties of the material and possibly impairing the function of that material, the environment, or the technical system. Well, that's a pretty good definition. NACE has a definition of the deterioration of material, usually a metal, because of a chemical or electrochemical reaction with its environment. Well, hey, that's a lasagna battery, right? That's exactly what they're describing. Now, because people spend so much money on their equipment, they don't want it to corrode away. So that's why we all have jobs. And if you look into how much money corrosion cost, I was just flabbergasted by these numbers. So NACE, through an impact study, they estimate that every single year, the globe, the world, spends an average of 2.5 trillion with a T US dollars every single year. Oh my gosh. Now, that is 3.5% of the global gross domestic product. That's just unfathomable to me. So, with that, luckily, that's what we do. We don't stop corrosion, we try to slow down corrosion, and we all have jobs because of that. We're all learning new things because of that. And folks, I'm just really happy that I could share my lasagna battery story. Now, I've never asked James McDonald if he's made a lasagna battery, so I'll have to ask him the next time that I see him. But until then, here's a brand new Words with Water with James.
Hello and welcome to Words of Water with James, the industrial water game show where I give you the definition and you get to guess the word or phrase being defined. Will you rise to the top or get blown down to try your luck another day? There's only one way to find out on Words of Water with James. Today's definition is any of the elements found in Group 7A, also known as Group 17, of the periodic table, including fluorine, chlorine, bromine, and iodine, characterized by the ability to disinfect water. Can you guess the word? The answer is halogen. Okay, for those who got it correct, step to the right. For those who got it wrong, please step to the left. I think there are some new microorganisms in the basin now. I'm James McDonald, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Words of Water with James.
Well, thank you, James. And if you liked my lasagna battery story, maybe you'll like some of these conferences that I'm going to mention. So here is the Young Professional Summit taking place March 22nd through 24th. That's going to be in Charlotte, North Carolina, and this is all around water and wastewater. So if you're going to be in the area, this would be a great place to network and even find some supplemental training, meet some new people, maybe even meet a mentor that you might have in the future. We're, of course, going to have all that information on scalinguph2o.com, going over to our events page. And while you're there, you'll also see the American Chemical Society's Spring 2026 Annual Conference. And that is taking place in my hometown here in Atlanta, Georgia, March 22nd through 26th. Lots of people in the Scaling Up Nation are members of the American Chemical Society. They actually have a secret handshake, and somebody, I won't disclose because you might get into trouble, actually shared that secret handshake with me. So what a great group, a group of chemists. I mean, that just sounds amazing to hang out with. So if you want to find out more about that, we're going to have that on our events page. And then finally, the 99th Annual Arizona Water Conference. This is a really big deal. Of course, this has been going on for a while. And when you talk about places that need to be concerned about water, it is Arizona, specifically Phoenix. There is no easy water to get to. It's all aquifer, or it's all coming in from a river that they've kind of made it so they can take from that. Anyway, that's taking place in Phoenix, Arizona, April 28th through 30th. And we're going to have all of that information and so much more on our events page. Well, Nation, I'm so excited because now we get to talk about corrosion coupons and other things as well. But one of my favorite topics, here's that interview. My lab partner is Will Ritter, Vice President of Metaspec. Will, welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Hi, Trace. Thanks so much for having me. And not just thank you for having me, but I also just want to say thank you so much for everything that you do for our industry. This podcast has definitely been a huge help to me. I'm not a technical person, I'm not a water treater. So this podcast is a resource to me. It's just been huge to kind of get plugged in and used to the industry and understanding what my water treatment customers are doing and what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So and I know it's great for educating the new people that are new to the industry and promoting the industry, which is a big thing that we all need to do, right? There's a lot of gray-haired guys out there that are starting to retire and stuff like that, and so we got to worry about who's going to fill those shoes and how are we going to educate those people and make sure, I think you say it on the podcast a lot, right? Raise the bar in water treatment. So how do we make sure that bar doesn't drop as we transfer the knowledge to the next generation?
Well, I really appreciate that. That's our mission. We want to raise the bar of the industry. We do that one water treater at a time, one listener at a time. So it means a lot to hear you say that. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Would you mind telling the Scaling Up Nation a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Houston, Texas. Decided to go to Texas A&M for university. Got really passionate about entrepreneurship and small business when I was at Texas A&M. So I was part of a small business program there. Got the opportunity to learn a lot about small business. Talked to a lot of small business owners as part of my kind of senior project there. And luckily, kind of as it worked out, I got the opportunity to work for somebody that was a successful small business person right as they were making an acquisition of another company, which was, of course, Pacific Sensor, where I got started at. And I've just loved every minute of it. I'm the kind of person what's the saying, toe tap to work or dance to work every day. I'm just excited on Mondays. I'm not upset about Mondays. I love coming into work. I'm excited about what I do. Every day is different. Every day is exciting, something new. There's always new stuff to learn. New people ask us for new materials, new types of test specimens, all kinds of stuff. So I got started making, corrosion coupons with Pacific Sensor. Learned a lot. Eventually went to night school. Got my MBA going to night school at University of Texas Arlington. Pacific Sensor eventually got acquired, and I got the opportunity to work for a new boss and learn new things. And just, I would say one thing about me, my kind of biggest strength, biggest weakness, I love to learn, right? So sometimes I get just kind of distracted by learning, but that's what I love to do. And I live here, Midlothian, Texas, with my lovely wife, and we have 3 young children. They're 8, 5, and 3. So when I'm not at work, I'm coaching baseball and chasing kids around and doing that kind of thing. So just trying to be good and do good.
Well, tell us about the journey. You were in school and then somehow you met the owner of Pacific Sensor. What was that story? How did you meet and you landed in your dream job?
I gotta say, Trace, I can still remember when I was 8 years old, playing in the backyard. I saw my first rusty nail, and I was just like, "Man, I know what I want to do with my life."
Is
No,
that story true? I would love it if that story was true.
no, no. So absolutely not. Right. So like most people that fall into kind of a water treatment, I feel like is a bit of a niche industry. Corrosion is a bit of a niche industry, and everybody kind of has a story, right? And my story kind of starts with going to Texas A&M, right? So growing up in Texas, around the age of first grade or so, there's this big decision you have to make early on in your life, which is, are you going to be an Aggie or a Longhorn, right? Like this is a critical moment in every child's development in the state of Texas, right? And I had a friend whose mom was an Aggie vet, so he convinced me in first grade, you want to go to Texas A&M, like that's where you need to go. So I was committed at the age of first grade, go to Texas A&M, and so I did that, and I was lucky enough to meet another really good friend of mine. His name is Paul Fletcher, and we both ended up on the executive board of a fraternity, Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity. I was the president, and he helped me out on the board. So we became really good friends working together. We were running an organization together in college. And by the way, if you want a little trial by fire in terms of management experience, try managing 220-year-olds in college. That's let me tell you that you'll learn a lot about how to manage
I
people.
bet. I bet.
So we were doing that together, and I was kind of trying to decide what I wanted to do. I was thinking about I was actually training for going into the military. That was kind of my plan. And but I had also recently met my what was to be my wife at the time. So I was kind of like having second thoughts about joining the military and that kind of thing. And Paul approached me and was like, "Hey, my dad is looking at buying this company. You know, he's kind of like, we've worked together, we're good friends. I know we work well together. Would you be interested in kind of coming along and being a manager at this company that my dad's looking at buying?" And so that's kind of how I got introduced to it. And that company was Pacific Sensor. And I remember his dad came down for like a parents' weekend or something, and he brought some corrosion coupons with him as part of the interview. And he dumps these things out on the table, and he's like, "This is what we make." And I'm just like, "What? Like little pieces of metal? Like you have a whole business around these little metal bits?" Like, I mean, I just had no idea what they were or anything about corrosion or anything like that. And I was like, "Okay, well, sounds good. I mean, I like you. I want to learn from you." He seemed like he'd be a good mentor to me. And so it ended up being a great decision to go work for him. But I really jumped in with no idea what I was doing or what to expect. I had never seen the building that I was going to be working in. I had never been to California before. I had never traveled much or anything like that. So just jumped into it. I graduated on a Friday. I flew out to California the following Monday and
Oh,
started my
wow.
started my journey with Pacific Sensor. So Paul had bought the company from the founder, Doug Bender. Doug Bender was a former bets guy, so he was a water treater, so he had that experience, and he also worked for another company called Roarback Casasco or Casasco Systems, or I think they're just Casasco now. But he worked there for a while, so he had a lot of experience in corrosion, and I learned as much as I could living out there with him for about a month. Just running Pacific Sensor and stuff like that. And we just loaded everything up on a truck one day and moved it all to Dallas. And so I had to find an apartment in Dallas and figure out where to live, and where learned then, a month after I had started, where I was going to live and where I was going to work and that kind of stuff. So just, it's kind of going with the opportunities that are presented, and the adventure of life. Right. So we got into it for a little bit. Again, I had no idea about water treatment, or again, a brand new. I had really no idea what I was doing with any of this. And I got talking to a guy by the name of Chris Fanning. Chris was on the alumni board at our fraternity, and he was literally, his job was like to make sure we didn't burn the house down in college. And so
That's a good job.
so that wasn't his. Well, come to find out, I didn't know what he actually did, but his full time job, he was a water treater, but I had no idea. So I called him, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing now? What's going on these days?" And I was like, "Well, I started working for this company, and we make this thing called corrosion coupons." And he was like, "Oh, I know what coupons are," which is totally shocking because no one in the real world knows anything about corrosion coupons, right? Like no one knows that. So I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "I used to work for this company called Nowco, and we used a ton of them. And in fact, we still use a lot of them in my current job." And he worked for a company called ChemCal. So he says, "Yeah, we'll probably start buying from you guys. Let me introduce you to some of our lab team." And well, it turns out one of the people in part of his lab team was one Jim Lukanich, who I know and has been on the show.
Great friend of the show.
So I met Jim early on. This had to be 2014, 2015, something like that. And didn't know anything about AWT at the time. And Jim was the one that was like, "Hey, you guys should come check out AWT. Like, it would be great." And I think it was around the time that he was, I think, president or something, or a president-elect of AWT or something like that at the time, or around that time frame. So he invited us out, and I went out to AWT, and I was like, it was a game changer, right? I was like, wow, just was kind of shocked, like, wow, all this stuff, all these people for water, like, kind of like, who knew? Again, it's just an industry that kind of operates in the background, and I knew nothing about it, and that's kind of where my journey as it relates to water started, right?
Well, I remember your first AWT trade show, and you guys always seem to be relaxed when you're at the trade show. You're having fun. People will just sit behind their booths on their phones. That's not you guys. You guys really seem to know what you're doing, and you're able to have good conversations. At least I felt like I had a good conversation every time I stopped by to see you. So that kind of takes us into marketing. You guys do a really good job with that. What are some tips maybe you have if somebody's getting ready for a trade show, or they're a little nervous, they don't know how to do it properly? You're a seasoned pro. What would you tell them?
Well, I would just say the main thing is don't be afraid. I think a lot of people are afraid that someone's going to come by and ask them something that they don't know, or maybe they're going to kind of make a fool of themselves. Especially, you mentioned LinkedIn and stuff like that. If you're recording yourself or something like that, everyone's a little bit nervous. And so I think one of the things you just kind of have to get comfortable with is just saying, I don't know. I don't know, but I can find out, and just get. And I've done a better job of that as I've gotten older and gotten more experience. It's kind of weird. I know more now, but I'm more comfortable saying I don't know than I used to be. So I think that's a big one. And I think a lot of people, well, I guess I'll just speak for myself. I don't take myself too seriously, right? So I'm not afraid to be, I don't know, a little bit silly, or I don't want to say unprofessional, but just willing to add some entertainment value and kind of try to bring a little bit of spice to stuff. So you'll see me juggling in the booth and just trying to talk to people and stuff like that. It's a lot better if we're working at a trade show booth. It's nice to just have people to talk to and stuff like that. I mean, if there's no traction and there's no action at the booth, it makes for a long day when you're sitting there all day, right? So I like to try to bring people in. And I think another thing that people don't take advantage enough is the LinkedIn, marketing component of that, and maybe not just LinkedIn, but the digital marketing component, right? Because you're in person, you're there at the trade show, but you also want to capitalize on this moment, digitally. And luckily, a lot of the stuff in the digital world is free, right? Like it doesn't cost you anything to post something on LinkedIn or something like that. So I think it's something more, especially small businesses, really need to take advantage of, because as a small business, what are you going to do? You take out an ad in for the Super Bowl or something like that, right? Like it's just not practical. It's way too expensive, and that kind of thing. And you just got to take advantage of these free resources when it comes to marketing your business.
I know a lot of people that phone becomes 20 pounds heavy when they pick it up and they try to record some sort of digital content for the first time. So let's say that they have no content out there, they have no experience in ever doing that. What tips do you have for them to get started?
Tip number one is just do it, right? Just commit to it and try it. And it's one of those things. I've experienced that exact same thing you talked about, the phone feeling like it weighs 20 pounds. And I've gotten a little bit better, but I wouldn't consider myself a seasoned pro in recording myself. There's something about seeing yourself.
Well, here's the other side of that. I see what you produce, and I don't see that. I don't see that you're nervous. I don't see that, oh my gosh, I don't feel like doing this. It comes across great. So it's only in your head.
Right, right. Yeah. And again, it comes with, first of all, just commit to just doing it. And I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, the better you'll get. And one of the things that I did, probably the last, let's see, year, 18 months, is I joined a Toastmasters club. So I don't know if you're familiar with Toastmasters, but
I am. But tell the audience if they're not
yeah. So
familiar.
so basically, Toastmasters is a public speaking club, and they have clubs, in cities all over the country. In fact, all around the world. And it's just kind of a low stakes way to practice public speaking and to hop in and learn how to speak in front of people. And literally, people are there to just support you and listen to you, and it help people overcome that fear of public speaking. And I think the more you do it, the better you get, the more comfortable you get. And in that type of environment, there's literally no stakes. Like probably no one in the room, if you're just joining a new club, they don't really even know you. They don't know what you do for a living. They're not going to record you and post it publicly or something like that. They're literally, everyone's there doing the same thing, trying to get better at public speaking, get better at communicating. And then I would say, outside of going to college, that's been the best thing I've done for myself in terms of improving how I'm able to communicate, and really just building confidence, right? If you're on a Teams call with two or three customers or something like that, that can be a little bit nerve wracking. I think a lot of us are getting used to it these days, communicating on Teams, but it feels a lot better when you're like, well, just this morning I just gave a speech in front of 30 people, so me talking on Teams to two or three people, that's nothing compared to the fact that I was giving a public speech this morning. So just gives you kind of a confidence boost in terms of your ability to communicate.
Daniel Pink says it takes 10,000 hours to master a particular topic. And I think that's exactly what you're describing. Oh, I'm scared of public speaking. Okay, I've never done it before. Of course, I'm going to be scared of it. And now I'm going to compare myself to somebody that just came off the TED Talk stage. All right, well, that's not a realistic comparison because they probably do have more than 10,000 hours. So I love your message. Hey, start today. And now you're starting to rack up that hours and you're starting to become more comfortable with what it is that you're not comfortable with.
Right. And I mean, if you're nervous, that just means that you're growing, right? Don't turn away from things that scare you and make you a little bit nervous, right? And embrace those things and recognize that's you developing, right?
Do you know how hard it was to record episode number 1 of this podcast? Oh my goodness. It was one painful to listen to. It was painful to record. It's still up there. I don't know why people listen to that. But if you need any motivation on how bad something could be and then you get better as you do it, that was my first shot at trying that. I had no clue what I was doing. I don't know if I have 10,000 hours into podcasting, but I bet I'm not far off of that now.
Like you say, you just gotta take the leap, and the more you do, the better you get. And like you say, don't compare yourself to someone that's been doing it a long time. Just compare yourself to who you were yesterday, right? Just try to get better every day.
It's a great message. And I'll make sure to put something on Toastmasters. So if people want to go to the show notes page, it will take them directly to their website because I think they're a great organization. I have never been, but several people that I coach are members of Toastmasters. So I want to make sure that other people can find them. So thank you for bringing them up. And I did want to ask you, I introduced you with Metaspec. However, everybody knows you from Pacific Sensor. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, yeah. So, like I mentioned, I started out working for Paul Fletcher, his family, and they've been great to me. Like I said, he was a great mentor to me. Still is a mentor to me. They're like family. Because of him, I got to do so many great things. Like before I started working, think I had maybe been on a total of like three airplane flights in my whole life or something like that. Like I just hadn't got out much and experienced the world much as a kid. And thanks to this job and to him, I've been able to go to places like Alaska, and he got me addicted to going to Alaska and, California, and lots of travel, Canada and stuff like that. So really grateful to him. And he made the decision to kind of step back and sell the company back in 2021. So I got the opportunity to work for somebody else in 2021. New owner Nathan Wicker, he took over the company, and he actually owned another company based in San Antonio called Metaspec, and that's where the name come from. Is the brand that was already established down in San Antonio. And for the last few years, we've kind of operated as sister companies, so we support each other where we can, but we've mostly operated separately. And then over the last year or so, we've kind of made a concerted effort to merge the brands and begin kind of marketing things together so that we can work together more, and again really just focus on brand building. And so that's really opened us up and given us a lot more capability in terms of all the stuff that we make down in San Antonio. We have a full machine shop down there. They make all types of test specimens. So the legacy Pacific Sensor business was really focused just on internal corrosion and corrosion coupons. And Metaspec is much more, let's say, diversified, right? So they serve the aerospace and defense industry, for example, all over oil and gas, automotive, stuff like that. They make panels for testing paints and coatings and lubricants and coolants, and they sell a lot into test laboratories. So we have a much larger and much more diversified business and a diversified brand working together. So that's kind of been the project over the last year or so, is trying to figure out how we work better together and how we really build this Metaspec brand that we're moving forward with. So the company will, right now, you'll see a lot of co-branding. We'll see Pacific Sensor and Metaspec together. And then we plan to just move forward as Metaspec starting in 2026. So coming up here in a few months.
Well, let's talk about it all started with a rusty nail. Let's talk about corrosion coupons. And did you hear my original corrosion coupon episode where I kind of told the story of the corrosion coupon? It was episode 75. I had to go back and look. And then recently I went ahead and redid that. I don't remember what that number was.
Yeah, I think I listened to both of those.
I think I told the story on there, but I remember. So we're very fortunate. We get some AWT members that send in their corrosion coupons, and we'll analyze them for them. And there was this one coupon that was sitting on my desk. It was put away wet. I mean, literally, it was corroding in the envelope. They sent it US mail. It was all bent up. I mean, there was no love given for this corrosion coupon. And I felt sad for it. And I was just looking at it. I'm like, you know what? I want to do my next podcast to tell this guy's story. And we went ahead and put it through cleaning and weighed it, but I don't know how good that was because everything was done incorrectly. It didn't really give us the real story. So I tried to tell the story on that episode, and I'm going to give you that opportunity now because you not only do everything that I just talked about, but you also make them. So if somebody just tuned in today, maybe they're a new water treater, they don't know what we're talking about. What the heck is a corrosion coupon?
I'll do a kind of a quick overview generally of what coupons are. So coupons are little pieces of metal and they're used in, of course, water treatment, but also in oil and gas and also in laboratories to do corrosion testing. So not just in water treatment, but in water treatment, typical size is 3 by 1/2 by 1/16. So you're talking about a fairly small piece of metal and it's pre-weighed, typically out to 4 decimal places. You put it into a system, so that could be again in a lab environment or in a pipeline or in water treatment into industrial cooling water, process water environment. Typically, you expose that coupon for about 90 days. You take it out, you clean it, you weigh it, and then you compare that to get the mass loss to the initial weight. So you have a mass loss, and then there's a formula that you use to calculate a corrosion rate in what are called mils per year, which is 1,000th of an inch per year. So in theory, that would tell you how much material loss you're experiencing in the system, or that the coupon experienced after being exposed in that environment. And of course, the bigger that number is, the worse the corrosion is. And so our goal as water treaters is to try to get that number down.
So great example, great explanation. Let me kind of reverse it and give you an open mic to help all corrosion coupons out there. What are some of the things we're getting wrong?
So I think number one is a philosophy type thing, right? Because I think a lot of people have a kind of a misunderstanding of what a coupon is, and they mistakenly think that a coupon is the pipe or it is the tube or something like that. So if I say the corrosion rate that's calculated as 2 MPY, well, that must mean that the tubing in my system loss is going to lose 2 thousandths of an inch in thickness this year, right? And that's not how coupons work. That's not how they're used. The idea is not to necessarily mimic the surface inside the system, but to use the coupon as a relative gauge of the corrosivity of the system, right? So when we're using coupons, I'm comparing the corrosion rate over time to see if my treatment program is working. So did the corrosion rate on the coupon go up or did it go down? Did it stay the same? And of course, we want to try to typically bring the number down, right? But it's not necessarily representative of what exactly is going on inside the system, right? Because what can happen is the coupon itself, it's raw exposed steel, right? It's been prepared in a very specific way so that those results are repeatable and comparable over time when you're measuring by the coupon. But it doesn't necessarily represent what's happening inside the system. It just tells you the level of corrosivity of the fluid itself because there's so many variables that can change from where you install the coupon to what's happening at some other location inside the system, right? So the surface finish of the coupon is obviously different. Like I say, it's raw exposed steel than what's going on in a system that's been in service for years, right? It has a different surface area. It has different edge effects. The flow rate may be different. The temperature may be different. There's all types of things that may be different where you're exposing the coupon compared to somewhere else in the system. So again, people need to recognize that it's a relative measure over time so that we can compare that data across time. So that would be kind of number one is the philosophy behind it. We want to generate good repeatable data that we can compare over time, in this location, in this system.
Anything else you want to share?
That was kind of number one is the philosophy behind them, right? And then number two again is coupons are very very simple things as you alluded to. They don't get the respect they deserve, right? Some people think, oh, it's just it's just a piece of metal, it's just a simple piece of metal. I think I maybe said that earlier. It's just a piece of metal. But they're not just pieces of metal, right? If they were, you could just go grab a piece of metal out of a junkyard and stick it in your system and you would get some data based on that, right? And the fact we all know, obviously, that data would be totally useless, right? And the reason it would be useless is there are kind of five key characteristics of coupons that allow you, again, to generate repeatable, good, actionable data, right? So, first off, number one, and maybe most obvious, is the alloy, right? So we want to match the alloy to what's in the system, but we also want to make sure that what we're using is kind of the same spec of material. So not just carbon steel, but the specific grade of carbon steel, for example.
Now, out of curiosity, how many grades are they, or how many do you carry?
So the list is ever growing. I would say we supply over 200 alloys of different types of coupons, different metals, right? So that's not just steels, but all types of things. So there's a lot of variety out there.
I do think the common water treater thinks that there's just carbon steel, that there's just copper, and they don't realize that there are different alloys that go into that. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I know people are thinking this. How important is it to know the specific alloy in your system and making sure that you're getting the right specimen?
So again, in the spirit of comparing these results over time, right? I want to make sure I'm using the same alloy over and over again. And maybe I'm not using the identical alloy that's in the system, but I am using the same alloy each time I put in a coupon, right? So typically you're going to use what a lot of people refer to as mild steel or low carbon steel, but it's going to be in the water treatment industry, almost everyone's using 1010 carbon steel, right? Same with copper. Everyone's using, like you said, everyone's familiar with copper and carbon steel. Typically, you're going to see CDA 110 copper coupons, right? And you want to make sure that you've got that part right, and that again, like I say, you're using the same ones each time. And a lot of people go wrong. A good example is aluminum, right? Because people will call us and say, "Yes, I want an aluminum coupon." Well, aluminum that's used in industry is alloyed aluminum, right? It's not pure aluminum. So people think, oh, I just want an aluminum coupon. It's like, well, which kind? Because there's probably 300 kinds of just aluminum, right? And so again, if you're going to compare results over time, you want to make sure you're using that same grade of aluminum each time you put in a coupon, right?
So it's all about consistency.
Consistency, right? So you get repeatable results. That's right. Okay, and then let's see. What did I say? I said there's five things, right? So going on to number two, and then again, I think this one is kind of obvious, is the surface area. Well, if surface area changes, that's going to change your MPY calculation that you get. So I know depending on application, people will use coupons as long as 6 inches, sometimes as short as like half an inch, little tiny ones, which is fine. But the results from coupons of different sizes are also not comparable because the ratio of the amount of material, the density there compared to the amount of surface area changes, and so you're going to get a different MPY. So again, it's only comparable if you're using the same size specimen.
Well, let me ask you this. So I'm out in the field. I dropped the nylon nut that I was supposed to attach the corrosion coupon with. So I went to my local Home Depot. I got another nut, and this thing's huge. No big deal. It's still going to hold the coupon on. I put that on there, and now I've covered up this huge surface on that corrosion coupon. Is that a big deal?
You've changed the exposed surface area, so of course it's a huge deal. Yeah, you're not going to get the same results.
Not that I've seen that happen before.
And if it's a different type of nut, it may get, it may be tighter or maybe looser, right? And then you may have, crevice corrosion underneath that nut or something else that accelerates the corrosion on the coupon or, who knows? But the point is, you're creating variability. Exactly what's going to happen, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be better. I don't know if it's going to be worse in terms of the corrosion rate, but I know you've introduced another variable into the system that you don't want to do. So then number three is going to be the surface finish, right? So some industry standards do a good job of this. Some don't mention it at all, but the surface finish is critical to the corrosion performance, right? So you want a defect-free, consistent surface finish on a coupon. So again, you've got good repeatable results. So if you have a coupon that's all scratched up or damaged, or maybe it has existing pits or something like that, that could be an area where corrosion starts and it attacks. And so then you may have an accelerated corrosion rate on this particular coupon, and then you go the next quarter, you change out the coupon and you put in a different one, and that one's perfect and pristine. And now it didn't have those initiation points, right? And so you get a lower corrosion rate, and you're kind of like, what happened? What's going on here? And you could be chasing your tail just because the only thing that changed was the surface profile or some type of damage to it. And I know, again, in industry, there's different types of surface finishes that are used. Some use a ground finish, some use bead blasting, stuff like that. We sell a lot of bead blasted coupons. That's kind of standard for us, at least in the water treatment industry. But we do grinding and polishing and all kinds of things like that as well. But it's just important to know that the change in the surface finish is going to impact your corrosion rate data. And so, let's say you take over an account and it has coupons that are already in there, for example, and you don't know what surface finish it is, or in fact, it is a different surface finish than what you're going to put in. You just need to take that into consideration when you're interpreting that data. My good friend Paul Frail with Veolia, he published a paper on that with CTI. So I encourage everybody to go and look up that paper. I think I sent it to you, so hopefully you can share that in the show notes. But
I think that was TP 2518.
I believe that's right. Yep.
We'll make sure to have that on the show notes page, or at least a link to it.
Yeah, you can buy it from CTI, I believe, and I encourage everyone to read that. And basically, it just proves a lot of people knew this, but he kind of generated some data and proved it, which says, yeah, a change in the surface finish is going to impact the corrosion results.
A manufacturing question I have is, do you do the surface finish after they're stamped out, or do they come in that way?
After they're machined or punched, or however the coupon is made, different coupons are made in different ways. But however it's produced in the first place, the surface finish comes after. So yeah, it could be polished or bead blasted or whatever the case may be, or ground after it's already been machined. So that gives me to the fourth thing, which of course, and it may be obvious again, but is the initial weight, right? So there's a lot of people out there that will go and they'll just weigh coupons on any balance or something. It's like they got a scale that they looks like they bought in the kitchen section at the grocery store or something that's like it's made to weigh fruit or something like that, right? So again, it's a big deal and it's something people don't really think about, but it's like put a lot of time and effort into putting these coupons in and getting them out, and then you just weigh it on any old scale, you pulled out of the corner of the office somewhere or something like that, right? And that's not the right way to go about it.
Yeah, the postage scale isn't going to weigh corrosion coupons. And I don't think people realize how expensive each decimal point you go further on weighing actually gets. So to get something that goes to 4 decimal points, you're paying a pretty penny for that scale.
Yep. So at Metaspec, we actually use balances that go out to 5 decimal places. So you'll see if you buy coupons from us or on the label, right, it's recorded out to 4. But we buy top of the line balances and they're capable of going out to 5 decimal places. And as far as I know, I could be wrong about this, but we are the only ISO 17025 coupon lab in the world. So I haven't heard of another one. So I don't want to get that wrong. Maybe there's some more out there. So again, we do all the quality stuff that is consistent with ISO 17025 in terms of maintaining those balances and guaranteeing the quality of the weights that we're producing, right? So all of our balances are calibrated annually by a third party, for example. We use class 1 NIST traceable calibration weights every single day. So in the morning, all of our balances get checked with these checked weights, these calibration weights, and you literally can't weigh any coupons on there. The system won't let you weigh unless you do the calibration weights, right? And then, of course, we do things like annual PT testing. We do inter-lab comparisons. So we'll send out coupons to another lab for them to weigh and compare the results to make sure that the weight is correct. We want to make sure we're sending out coupons with correct, accurate initial weights. And so we put a lot of time and a lot of resources into making sure that that's right. And then, recently we added OCR cameras into our process as well. So each coupon, as it's weighed, it gets a photo taken of it, and that's saved in our database. So we have a photo of when the coupon was weighed. It's time stamped. We know what user weighed it. all that kind of stuff. And then the camera will read the serial number on it and confirm it with the database so that we know that coupon serial number and the weight of that coupon are properly linked together, and it's been verified by the camera. So again, I think we mentioned this, but there's a ton of science and a ton of engineering that goes into producing these coupons at scale to make sure that we're providing an accurate, precise coupon to the customer. And then the fifth thing, again, some people know this, and actually, I'm surprised by a number of people that don't. But when the coupons go out, they're in a protective packaging. So they're in VCI inhibited paper envelopes typically. Sometimes we ship them in a blue VCI bag, but there's a corrosion inhibitor inside those bags that protects them from corroding prematurely, right? So all these things all add up together so that we can provide the customer with peace of mind knowing, okay, they're getting what they wanted and they're getting an accurate specimen that, again, is going to provide them with actionable data as opposed to pulling a piece of steel out of the junkyard, right?
We can probably share some stories, but you mentioned the vapor corrosion inhibitor that's impregnated in that envelope. Well, with that, I've received corrosion coupons in plastic bags, and my favorite one was wrapped in aluminum foil.
Oh, nice. So,
Don't do that, folks. There's a reason that it goes out in that vapor corrosion inhibitor bag or envelope that's there. So make sure you hold on to that. Make sure you keep that. And that's where all your information is.
right, right. It sounds like they're trying to do a like a galvanic corrosion experiment while it's in
Well,
transit,
that's what
right?
happened. So you did mention a paper. You mentioned CTI's TP 2518. We'll make sure to have a link on our webpage. Are there other resources that we should be familiar with?
Yeah, so another good one that I'm a fan of that I actually have this on my wall is those, and I don't know if there's a standard or a reference number to it, but those AWT posters that they have, they've been giving them out at the convention the last few years. I've seen them, and
I was on the committee that was originally responsible for making those. I think it's been updated a couple of times, but yeah, those things are great. Everybody has those.
yeah, that's I like that they give those out. Those are cool. So I have one literally on the wall in my office, and then we kind of have them throughout our office. So I think that that's a good resource, and it's a good kind of quick reference guide, right? Because everything's most of what you need to know is right there. And another good one is the CTI standard. I believe it's 149. I sent that one to you, and I think of all the different kind of corrosion coupon standards out there, I feel like that one kind of hits the nail on the head the best, and it provides the most detail about coupons and how they should be made and that type of stuff. And that thing was originally written in like the year 2000 or something like that, so it's pretty old, but I think they did a pretty good job on that one. So I encourage people to look that one up. A couple others are ASTM G1. If you have access to ASTM or you're a member of ASTM, you can get that access to that standard for free. And then the other one, which is more oil and gas related, but the NACE standard SP0775 also talks about coupons and all of those. I think most of those will show you kind of the formula and all the stuff kind of behind the scenes that goes into coupons. So, if you use coupons, it's worth spending a little bit of time. These aren't like long standards, right? So just take an hour or so and read up on these things and kind of understand what you're trying to do with coupons. And
I love that advice because if you understand the process that's going to take place when they actually weigh them and clean them, you're going to take care of them better. You're going to do a better job up front because you know all the detailed work that goes on at the end. So I love that advice.
and to an even higher degree in the oil and gas business, right? Because on the oil and gas side, like they'll have coupons installed offshore and stuff like that. So they'll, literally spend tens of thousands of dollars to put a crew out there and do coupon removal. And also they spend all this money on getting people out there to pull coupons and do all that. And then, to take it and just, mistreat it and just throw it in a box and ship it, right? Like,
That's why I felt sorry for that coupon.
yeah, no, it's like you put all this effort, all this time and money into getting that coupon in there and getting it out, and then you mistreat it and don't get good data from it at the end, right? So who wants that?
Now, we talked about AWT previously, and you don't just exhibit at AWT, you're involved with AWT and you're involved with other organizations to try to make sure we're getting the best information about corrosion coupons. And if they're doing updates on standards or guidelines, you're trying to help them. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So, like I said, my boss, Nathan, he's a big technical guy. He loves to be involved in technical committees and technical standards. And so for us, it's just a way to demonstrate our expertise and a way to give back to the industry, right? And that's really a big deal to us is giving back and doing good. I'm not sure it's related to the question, but I'll kind of share a little side story and a little insight behind our business, right? So my boss told me one time is I'm fortunate enough to be at the point in life where I don't necessarily have to work in terms of, financially. And I think a lot of people probably listen to this podcast, right? Or maybe have achieved that, level of financial independence and stuff like that. But the thing he told me was, being involved in business and doing business the right way gives me an opportunity to do more good in the world, right? And I to me, without getting religious necessarily, right? You could still say, one of the meanings of life, right, is to just do as much good as you can with the little time that you have on earth, right? And I kind of have taken that and run with it in our business philosophy and our approach to business, right? And we apply that thought process to how we treat our employees and our coworkers. And we want to pay people well. We want to treat them well. We want to have a positive impact on their life. And if they choose to, hopefully we're educating our employees, we're teaching them things, and maybe they can elevate in their career. And if that means that they, move on to another company or something like that, well then great. Hopefully we've helped them in their career and helped them on their journey. And same thing with our suppliers. We hope we have a positive impact on them, and that by doing business with us, they're able to support themselves and their families. And then, of course, our customers, right? So that's one of the things I love about business and about small business, right? It's like a lot of people take goodness and being good and stuff. They consider that in their personal life and at their home life. But I think it's a good thing to consider in entrepreneurship and business, right? Is your business, the way you conduct yourself is another way for you to do good on earth. And just contributing to industry standards is just one way of us doing that.
No, I love that answer. That's great. I mean, that's the why behind you guys are doing that.
Yep. The more good we can do, the better.
So, if you buy a controller today, there's an option for electropolarization. So, we've got, and the name brand for that, I believe, is Corrator, that a lot of people still use that like Kleenex and tissue. So, what are some of the differences between, say, the Corrator style and the corrosion coupon style? Pros and cons, what should we know?
So Corrator is it's trademark name by Casasco actually. So I mentioned them earlier in the podcast. Used to be called Rohrback Casasco Systems. They're the ones that invented LPR technology back in, I think it was the 70s or 60s. Yeah, so LPR I think is a great tool. There's a lot of people, a lot of companies at AWT that sell LPR instruments, and the benefit of LPR is that it gives you real time data, so you can literally see your conversion rate move up and down in real time. You don't have to wait those that 30 or 60 or 90 days to get the information and get some results coming back. To me, the downside of it is what you don't get is that physical sample. You don't get the physical specimen, right? And there's some technology, a little more technology involved. You need a battery, or you have to wire it in, or something like that, right? You need access to some form of electricity to run LPR, whereas a coupon is a simpler device and it really gives you the physical sample. So if you're showing this to an asset owner of some kind and you say, "Oh yeah, we measured the corrosion rate by LPR and it was, 10 MPY or whatever, make up a number." They may not know really what that means. They don't know if that's good or that's bad. And with a coupon, if you take a coupon and you show it to them and it's all chewed up and it's ate up with corrosion, they're going to look at it and be like, "Oh my gosh, that looks horrible." And you can say, "Yeah, like this is what you're dealing with. This is what's going on in your system." And it gives you a tool there to help educate your customer. So I always tell everybody, I'm not necessarily, it's not one or the other. I think both are good tools to have in your tool belt. And we also make the consumables, the electrodes for LPR as well. So either way, it's not like I have necessarily an economic interest in one over the other either. Like we support both.
So, what's one piece of advice you can give all of our listeners today that they can put in practice tomorrow about something that they can do better with corrosion coupons?
So I would say treat your coupons in your coupon rack like you are taking a laboratory test and you're bringing it into the field, right? So the game that we're playing here is a variable isolation game, right? We don't want anything to change other than the one thing we're trying to measure. What we're trying to measure is the corrosivity of the fluid traveling through that line, right? Or the corrosivity of the fluid in the system. That's the only thing we want to change. That's the only thing we want to measure. And we don't want to make any other changes that are going to create variability or impact that. So that's kind of the approach. And a lot of people just don't realize all the variables that impact corrosion, right? So you have to just understand that just because something seems so simple like wearing gloves or not wearing gloves or how you orient the coupon or if you drop the coupon on the floor or whatever the case may be.
Does the 30-second rule or
Yeah.
10-second rule apply if you do that?
Yeah, I think 5 seconds. I think 5 seconds.
It's in a standard somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to write that into the next version at AWT. Uh, I think people just don't realize everything that actually does matter and will impact your results. And again, you could say, well, I had someone say to me one time, I saw them install a new bundle in this heat exchanger, and they literally just drug it through the parking lot and stuck it in there. So what does it matter how I treat my coupon? I'm like, well, again, the coupon is not intended to replicate what happened to your heat exchanger bundle. If we wanted to do that, I guess we'd have to take it out of the parking lot and drag it through the parking lot and stick it in there. What we're trying to do is do the same thing every time so that we have repeatable data. So put your gloves on when you handle the coupon, be gentle with it, install it properly, orient it properly in the flow so it's vertically oriented, take it out, make sure you dry it, make sure you put it in the VCI bag. And like I said earlier, it's not a piece of metal. It's very special. Treat it as such.
It's great advice. And I can't tell you how many corrosion coupons I've seen with fingerprints on them. Let me ask that. Why is that such a bad thing to touch a corrosion coupon?
Again, I come back to variability, right? Because some people have asked before, well, if I you have oils on your skin, right? And you get those oils get on the coupon, and then I mean, sometimes you can see if you touch a fresh coupon and leave it on your desk, the next day you'll come back and you'll see corrosion from your fingerprint, right? And some people ask me, well, does that improve the corrosion rate or does it make it worse? Or what's the impact of that? And I'm like, I don't really know what it is. I just know that it creates variability, which is bad. So that's my takeaway from all this stuff is we're eliminating anything that's going to create variability in our test that we're running here so that we have good, repeatable, actionable data. I think hopefully I haven't said that too many times, but
No, I think that's the theme.
yeah.
If you're going to take the time to use a corrosion coupon, you better make sure it's repeatable. Well, Will, this has been great. I'm going to be sure to put how people can contact you on our show notes page. I'll put the references that you mentioned on our show notes page. Now, I do have some lightning round questions for you if you're ready for those.
I sure hope so.
Will, if you can go back in time and talk to your former self on your very first day as a small business manager, what advice would you give yourself?
I think it's a pretty easy one for me. I would say don't be afraid to say I don't know. I think that was my biggest thing when I first started. I mean, I was literally scared to answer the phone, because I was like, what if a customer calls and I like have no idea what I'm talking about and I don't know what to say. And so I think you gotta set yourself free a little bit, right? And say, I honestly I don't know. And then, use the resources at your disposal to try to go educate yourself and figure it out later. That's kind of a motto around our business, right? It's like, I don't know, but we'll figure it out.
Love it. What are the last few books that you've read?
So I'm currently reading a book that's called Material World by Ed Conway. So I'm about 100 pages into that one. I haven't finished it, but I don't know. Lately, I've kind of got obsessed with this idea of like the mechanical world or the material world because it's like these days all the sexy jobs and that kind of stuff, they're all in, software or tech or related to computers and all that stuff. And I think we forget that none of that stuff could exist without some of these basic materials, right? And I think in the book it says there's six raw materials that shape the modern civilization. And I know we've mentioned some here today: copper and iron, and of course oil, and there are others. Just these basic things that I feel like are getting neglected in the world today. Like I say, and we need young people to go into these fields because we still need energy. We still need this stuff. We still need water treatment. We need this stuff to keep the world going. We wouldn't have electricity. We wouldn't have the internet without these material things. So I've enjoyed that book so far. Book number two, I read recently. I posted this one on my LinkedIn, is Steel Isn't Hard to Learn by Shane Turcott. You can look that one up. It's already on my LinkedIn page, and you can follow Shane on LinkedIn too. He posts all these cool corrosion experiments and stuff like that. So it's a recommended follow for you on LinkedIn. And third one, I've read this before, but I recently listened to it on audiobook in my car. It's called The Goal. It's by Elihu, and I think I say the first name wrong, but Elihu Goldrat. I love that book. Have you heard of this one?
I have. I've read that. Brian Kotarski, who is with Aqua Phoenix, he actually gave me a copy of that book, all about lean manufacturing.
Right, right. It's a great, great introduction to the theory of constraints, and it tells it in this kind of, interesting way, right? It's written as a novel. So if you get the audio book, it's pretty cool too, because they do, voices for the characters and all that stuff. So it kind of comes out like a play.
So, are you guys? Do you undergo lean manufacturing?
We try to implement some of it, but I wouldn't say we're full bore just yet. But we are in a constant state of improvement, as they say.
Kaizen, I believe the book points out, is what that's called. Well, when they make a movie about your life, who do you want playing Will Ritter?
So throughout my life, I've got a couple of Hollywood actors' names thrown at me that I remind them of, right? And one of them was Keanu Reeves, and the other was Nicolas Cage. And so I think I'm gonna go Keanu Reeves. Just I love a good shoot 'em up film. So you can't go wrong with a bunch of action and guns blazing.
You can talk to anybody throughout history. Who would it be with and why?
So I think a lot of people say this, and I feel like you can't go wrong, and it's Ben Franklin, right? I mean, I read his autobiography here, I don't know, probably a year or two ago, and you're just like, wow, this is the most interesting guy. Just he's a statesman, but also a scientist, so he kind of a jack of all trades guy. He has just an incredible life story. I feel like at one point he was talking about, I think when he was like 14, he basically ran away from home and ended up like shipwrecked or something like that, and like comes to a new town like with literally nothing, just the clothes on his back, and starts from scratch, right? So he's an entrepreneur too. And I feel like it's like these days, the modern era, a lot of people have their complaints, right? And I'm just like, this guy literally like showed up in a new town, like shipwrecked in 17 whatever 50 or whatever it was, and started a business from scratch and built the first library and all, all this stuff. It's like, it's like that's kind of one of the things I tell myself. I was like, what do I have to complain about?
I think Ben Franklin is the most repeated answer to that question. So you join a lot of people with that.
You can't go wrong.
Well, Will, I want to thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast, sharing the story that I started many episodes ago, making sure the corrosion coupon gets the respect that it deserves. And you, of course, gave us so much more information so we could understand why it deserves that respect. So thanks for coming on the show.
No problem. Respect the coupon.
Will, once again, thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast. Thank you for allowing me to talk about one of my favorite topics. How can Trace get so excited about a little slip of metal? Well, I will tell you, I feel that I owe a lot to that little slip of metal. I know a lot about systems because of corrosion coupons. And because somebody cared to share their knowledge with me, I'm now able to read a corrosion coupon like a lot of people can't read. And that's pretty darn cool. And that being said, the corrosion coupon is one of those things that people just take for granted. And we're going to have earlier shows that I've done on corrosion coupons. I mentioned them on the interview. We'll, of course, have those on our show notes page. But I remember I was actually doing a corrosion coupon analysis for somebody else that wasn't us. They were sending their corrosion coupons to me to analyze, and it was not in good shape. They had put it in that vapor envelope wet. They didn't even really fill out the vapor envelope. They threw it in the mail. Either they bent it or the mail bent it. So it was in rough shape. It was probably corroding in transport because of how they put it into the envelope. And it was literally just thrown into a regular envelope and mailed to us. And I was just thinking, this poor little coupon has gotten no respect. You know, it's given its life for the last 90 days, or I don't remember how long it was in the system. And the person who was in charge of taking care of this little guy just didn't take care of him in the way that I thought that he should. And I said, don't worry, your sacrifice is not going to go for naught. And I actually did that first corrosion coupon because I felt so bad for that little corrosion coupon guy. So now you know that's the kind of person I am. I'm always giving back, whether it's to you, the Scaling Up Nation, or little inanimate objects that are sitting on my desk. But I'm always trying to make you think of things differently. I'm always trying to make you think, okay, what can I do next? What can I know more? And I hope that this episode and this interview has challenged you to do that very thing. At the very least, I hope the next time you interact with the corrosion coupon, you're going to give it the respect that it deserves because you know that is your little friend that is going inside the system that you are treating to get valuable intelligence that you don't have any other way of getting without him. And you're going to give him more respect when he comes out on the other end. Nation, we're going to have a brand new episode for you next Friday. Thanks for listening to this one. Tell a friend, and we'll see you next week. Want to ensure you're fully prepared for the Certified Water Technologist examination? Our CWT prep course provides you with the tools and knowledge you need. From detailed study guides to a 100-question practice exam, we've got you covered. Visit scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep and start your journey to certification.